What is reactive PR and what do SEOs need to know about it? Hello and welcome to the June 2025 edition of the Majestic SEO panel, where we're discussing what is reactive PR and what do SEOs need to know about it. I'm your host, Bain. Joining me today are four great guests. So let's meet them, starting off with Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ross. I am an account director at R&Co Communications. We're an agency based in the West Midlands and started life as a traditional PR agency 45 years ago. And then in recent years, we've added SEO and social media to our portfolio. On a personal note, I've worked in PR for well over 10 years and SEO for about 8 years, working across the two disciplines and helping to integrate them really for the clients that I work with.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us, Sarah. And just to confuse things, also joining us with us today is Sarah Jayne.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jayne. I'm a senior digital PR manager at Cedarwood Digital. So we are an SEO, PPC and digital PR agency based in Manchester. I'm remote, so I'm based up here in Newcastle. But I've worked in digital PR and digital marketing for over 7 years now. I'm really passionate about reactive PR. It's something that I really think has loads of potential for a range of clients. So really excited to chat with you all today.
Thank you so much for joining us. And another one of our great panelists today is Danielle.
Hello, I'm Danielle, Neah Amponsah, and I've been working in digital PR, digital marketing for 11 years now. I started off in the digital PR and SEO agency back in 2014, and since then I've been working in-house for a number of brands as well as on the agency side. And at the moment I'm a consultant running Handnote, so you can find me there. We work with a range of brands spanning from wellness to international sort of media and all of that. So it's really great fun doing the across the industry.
Superb. Thank you, Danielle. You're cutting out very slightly there. I don't know if you can get your microphone slightly closer or, if necessary, perhaps even change over mic that we were experimenting with beforehand. But hopefully we can get you sounding a little bit more clearer there. But let's move over to our final panelist today, and that's Eva.
Hi, I'm Eva Cheng. I'm a freelance digital PR consultant. So I work with a lot of in-house businesses as well as working with the agencies and giving them support on digital PR side. I have around about 8 years experience within digital marketing. Started off in social media for a few years, still continue to do social media, but digital PR is kind of my main domain now.
Lovely. So every one of our panelists has a decent amount of experience there, roughly 8 to 10 years of experience in digital PR, reactive PR. So we're going to get a lot of wonderful definitive experienced information today. Let's start off with a question, the same question for everyone, maybe starting off with Sarah. What is reactive PR?
Yeah, so reactive PR is really about responding to what's happening. So, it could be a big news story that's breaking. It could be something that's trending. It could be, so for us at R&Co, a lot of our clients are in the B2B space. So we are doing a lot of reactive work around changes in legislation. So Brexit conversations, Trump's tariffs have been a big one for us. We work with a big customs broker. So, responding to these big sort of news topics and helping to, kind of add context and help people to understand what they mean. So that's, as an agency, that's the bulk of kind of the reactive work that we do.
Trump's tariffs. Try not to say that too many times when you've had too many beverages at the end of the day. Sarah Jayne, what are your thoughts on what is reactive PR?
Yeah, I think it's finding that way to put your brand at the heart of what people are talking about, whether that is like something that's happened in the news, whether it's a social media trend, kind of broader industry trends. It's about kind of having your finger on the pulse of what's going on, what's relevant to your client, where can you add value with commentary, and just kind of, keep what you're talking about very fresh, and it appeals to journalists because it's timely, and that's ultimately what we're looking for, that journalistic appeal as well.
Lovely. And Danielle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and as they mentioned also, I like to think of reactive PR as having three main sort of areas. So the main area would be doing proactive reactive. So that's when you have people, basically when you've got your calendar all set up and you know for a particular brand, for example, if you're working wellness space, maybe mental health awareness week, you've got something planned in for that. And then another thing that I would think about is newsjacking, which is when there is a story breaking. I think Sarah mentioned that you hop onto that, and if you have expert commentary, statistics or anything to add. And then another thing I'd think of, the third area of reactive PR I like to think about is journal requests, which is of course when the journalists are actively seeking expert commentary or a piece of a story idea or something to complete their story that they're writing on, and you can jump onto that, provide expert commentary.
Great examples there. And Danielle, your audio is a lot better there, so thanks so much for doing whatever you've done to it. Eva, what are your thoughts?
Literally everything that everyone else has said. So
Okay.
yeah, it's just about
we'll move on to
bringing in.
no, only joking. Sorry, you carry on.
It's just about bringing, I guess, your brand that you're working for to the forefront of the media by jumping on relevant news of the time. Yeah.
Superb. Okay, so Daniel shared some good specific examples. Maybe let's dive into more specific examples in terms of why it's so valuable for SEO. So going back to Sarah Ross, Sarah, what are your thoughts on why it's so valuable for SEO?
Yeah, so it's a really good opportunity for link building. It's a really good opportunity to get your brand in high quality media titles that you might not necessarily gain coverage in otherwise. So having the right spokesperson quoted, sending expert commentary from them to add to a journalist's story is really valuable for positioning them as an expert, sending all the right signals to Google by gaining links either to, a service page that they might be, talking around that service and how it relates to the topic, or it could be a link back to their own personal bio within the company website, because that's also a really good signal for, those EAT signals. So yeah, there's a lot of value in there for SEO.
Sarah Jayne, I saw you nodding away quite a bit there. What did you agree with, and did you disagree with anything?
No, I agree with all of that. I mean, we work a lot with clients in the Your Money, Your Life space, and that thought leadership side of things is hugely important for the EEAT signals. We know, like, if you're working in things like finance or health or well-being, having those people there that can comment reactively, it's continually signaling to Google that you have expertise in that area, you have authority, and having those kind of brand citations or links in those kind of high DR publications further backs that as well. So I think from that point of view, it's probably one of the most valuable tools you can have if you've got those thought leaders on side as well.
Danielle, it was Sarah Jayne's thought leadership comment that seemed to resonate with you the most. Why was that the case?
Yeah, I think nowadays we see that, building a personal brand is very much talked about now online. As well as building a business, building a brand in terms of a business, you need to also come up as a founder. People want to know who you are. So having that thought leadership side by side with building your business is very much important. So in terms of EAT, SEO value, that does play a big role. So I think reactive PR is a great way for businesses as well as founders or C-suite professionals to get their name out there and actually build authority, build their brand, really. Yeah.
Eva, did you want to extend on those thoughts? I mean, for instance, are there any ways of deciding on which thought leader to use within a business?
Yeah, I think it really depends on, that's a classic SEO answer, isn't it? It really depends on kind of the request and the news you want to kind of jump on. I would say, for example, if it was like a mental health piece, you would use a mental health advisor for that. You wouldn't just use a general CEO and finance on something because it doesn't add up. Because if the media coverage doesn't add up to like your comments, then it doesn't make sense. And obviously Google will recognize that it doesn't make sense. So it obviously would impact you. I just wanted to add to that as well, like with category page link building, I found it very successful with reactive PR and based on the topics itself. So for example, if you wanted to build more links within, I don't know, a car leasing page, then if a journalist was looking for information on like the finance side of leasing or anything like that, it gives you the direct access and the ability to kind of request for that niche category page link, which will carry value over to your website through there. Yeah.
Okay, and are journalists generally open to linking directly to category pages? I mean, if you I guess, say something quite specifically on a topic in relation to what your category is about, then it would seem relevant and appropriate for them to link to you.
Yeah, from my past experience, I've had very positive outcomes from that. It's either they don't link or they will link to that specific page. Yeah.
No harm in asking that.
I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to build on that as well, it's obviously, like you say, it's making sure that whoever you're putting forward has that authority, and that kind of helps with the buy-in from journalists to get the links as well. You're kind of getting them on side to say, we have authority. It's almost like a give and take, because we've provided this expert commentary that really does add value to your article. So therefore, why shouldn't they want to link back to your site? Because it naturally has the authority that you've built through that person as well. So it's making sure that it matches all the way across, I think, is really important.
SJ, what metrics do you use to demonstrate to the journalist that you have the authority that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think bio pages are really important if you have them. So we work with a client in the bedding space, and they have sleep experts, and we've noticed in a lot of competitors that they're quoting maybe founders, but they don't have any background in science or health, or so it's looking at academic credentials, it's looking at where they've been cited before, and having all of that ready on a bio page is just signaling not only to Google but to those journalists they should be trusted. I know from experience that journalists are now going to a lot more lengths to check the credentials of who you quote in, and we're hearing it more and more, and that's twofold really. It's because AI, unfortunately, a lot of people are creating these AI generated experts who aren't real people, and it's also to do with credibility for them, right? They need to make sure that their source has the credibility that they're saying they do. So sometimes that might mean they're doing their due diligence and they're going on your site and they're looking at the profile, or they're looking at other sites they've been mentioned on, or even picking up the phone and calling. There is times where we've seen journalists wanting to pick up the phone and speak to the expert directly, because again, they're not, they know we're PRs, and often we might be drafting up quotes, but they need to know there's somebody behind that as well. So yeah, I think they're the kind of key ways to signal that.
I wasn't aware that an AI generated expert was such an issue, actually. So I guess that's more of a bigger thing as time goes by. Is it possible to create an AI generated expert that has such a good public persona, a LinkedIn profile, that most journalists are fooled by, or would most journalists not be fooled by that?
I think they're getting more savvy, but I've been to conferences where people have actively promoted this as a tactic, as an SEO tactic, and I think I can see everyone nodding as PRs. It absolutely I can't believe anyone would suggest it from an ethical point of view, but there's definitely there's definitely been some instances of those people being cited in very credible news sources, and they're not people. It's a huge problem in our industry. I don't know if you guys have come up against it as well.
Yeah, I've heard.
Sarah, sorry.
Sorry, I mean, yeah, I've heard people talking at conferences on this topic, and from a journalist point of view, it's very worrying for them, because it's their name on the line. If they're publishing something from an expert who isn't real, the outcome of that could be, the impact on their career could be really negative. But also in the long run, I mean, it's not going to work as a tactic. It's, at some point, it's going to come unstuck. So you might as well put the effort into actually doing it properly, is my point of view.
And coming unstuck could mean very negative things for your brand, of course, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'd be doing more harm than good.
Yeah, so, I think...
Go for it, Danielle.
I think SEOs or people that are using the AI generated sort of people to provide expert commentary, they're forgetting that the whole point of this is also to build reputation. It's building a brand. This is PR. At the end of the day, yes, it's digital. Yes, we've got the SEO element, which drives the whole value. But it's a business at the end of the day. You need to build that trust with your audience and with the journalists and everyone around, the public. It is PR. So I think what SEOs need to remember is that key element of it. Like, as Sarah was said, you will get stuck at one point. At one point, you won't be able to do it anymore.
So is a key element of the PR role to actually try and raise the profile of these thought leaders within businesses? And if so, is part of that to actually try and get AI to understand that these individuals are thought leaders or should be thought leaders within a particular niche? That's what you get when you don't direct a question to me. Sarah Jayne.
Yeah, I'd say so. We know that obviously LLMs, I can never say that quickly, are looking at signals from those kind of high DR consumer national titles. They're pulling them in to the AI overview, and they're quite often directly showing brands or experts at those brands to answer queries. So I do think it's becoming an increasingly important part of what we do, not just to build the brand, not just to build awareness around the brand, but to the people that are important to the brand as well.
What are a few steps that you would recommend taking in order to do that, to actually increase the presence of that thought leader online and in AI search engines?
I'd say, sorry, Eva, do you want to say this?
You go ahead.
Okay, I'll just say one point. First thing I would say was just to make sure you're very clear on the topics or the themes, the kind of what you want to be known for as a business or the brand, what your key topics are, just making sure that you're consistent with that throughout.
Eva.
Yeah, mine was exactly the same as Danielle's. This keeps happening. No, as Danielle was saying, like, keep consistent with like which areas you want to talk about. So, for example, if you were in the finance industry, I know that it's a very broad area to be talking about, but if you have a certain qualification or experience within, I don't know, loans, then stick to that area and that specific niche. And then from there, you will gain the reputation of a loan expert, whilst also journalists are recognizing, because they always keep an eye on other journalists' coverage within their space, and they will recognize that you are being used while your expert's being used, and then hopefully eventually will go to you directly for expert commentary.
Okay, that's a great tip there. So essentially, if you're a relatively big business with a few potential thought leaders, and maybe you've got some senior thought leaders that are experts at many topics, you would still not necessarily position that thought leader as an expert in multiple topics. You would perhaps say, okay, you are an expert on loans, you are an expert on mortgages, and we're going to build you up as an expert in those niche areas as opposed to too many different individual areas.
Yeah, I think that's not typically the best way to go about it, especially if you've got several people within the business who has the qualifications and the background to offer these expert tips on the area. Whilst we were on the topic of AI, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but have you seen journalists who have in their bio that they are assisted with AI? So AI assisted journalists. I think that's one of the things that people need to pay attention of who they're contacting, because do you want your brand to be associated with an AI assisted journalist? So I'm not saying that they're completely negative.
Journalist. Does that actually mean an AI, or is it?
So it's a journalist who would, I guess, would take your press release and take a load of different press releases and use AI to assist with writing I guess, the subtotal of like different press releases in one and different data sets. That's my point of view. I don't know if anyone's had any direct experience with someone from a journalist with AI.
That's how I understand it, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit,
Okay.
I think they've deliberately kept it a little bit mystified. I don't know whether that's a deliberate choice. They're very clear about the fact that their articles are written with the help of AI, but they don't do it entirely. But beyond that, it would be interesting to know what that looks like from a day-to-day for them.
Are there any tools that you use to actually determine which journalists are potentially the most relevant and authoritative to be approaching?
I personally think there's a ton of like media databases out there, and they're helpful, but nothing beats manually looking. Nothing beats like going into Google News and seeing who's covering that topic, especially if we're talking about reactive, like who's always talking about, we'll use Love Island as an example that comes out next week. So that's going to be a huge reactive opportunity for people in the lifestyle space. So which writers are writing about that? And you don't need an expensive tool, a database to go and find that yourself. So I would say that's like always my first port of call with like reactive, finding the right people for those.
So it would be good to actually perhaps use that particular example and maybe give the listener, the viewer, some tips in terms of how you'd go about using that particular series as an opportunity to feature your brand in a publication. First of all, do you actually build a relationship with a journalist beforehand? How do you pitch to them? What story is likely to resonate with a journalist, and how do you tie what you're doing together with that brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think relationships are important in PR without a doubt, but nothing beats a good story. And, you know, I always think people talk about we have this many relationships with journalists, but does that equate to coverage? Does it equate to links or whatever it might be? So for us, we look at it for an example of like, we have a reactive briefing twice a week, and we'll talk about what's coming up. And then we kind of pick it apart to say, like, how can we make this relevant to clients in the sleep space? How can we make it relevant to clients in the medical space, whatever it might be? Cosmetics, we kind of pick it apart on all its different levels, because the one thing you have to be really careful of is just because something is trending does not mean it is relevant to your brand, and doesn't mean you should be commenting on it. And that may have worked a few years ago to be doing content that had no relevancy. But I think from a reactive point of view, yes, Love Island's going to be huge, and we're all going to be talking about it, or, you know, the showbiz writers are all going to be talking about it. But again, should a loans company be talking about Love Island? Probably not. It's really using that common sense as well. Like, if I were reading that, would I want to hear from this person about this particular subject?
So, I mean, if you're a cosmetics company, and do you have to wait until someone talks about cosmetics on Love Island in order to have an opinion, or is your brand malleable enough in order to actually be able to just talk about Love Island in general? How do you go about trying to get your brand featured?
It is a case of like watching, seeing what people are talking about. Again, appreciate it's not everyone's cup of tea. And I'm not saying everyone should go and watch Love Island every night, but it's watching, like, what are they discussing? What are they wearing? What are the relationships like? If I was a cosmetics brand, I'd be saying, well, what are the kind of, what's the look of the new cast coming in? Are they very natural? Do they have really glam makeup? Whatever it might be, just picking out those kind of trends. It doesn't have to be that we're outwardly talking about the topic. In fact, I would argue it's better if you can find something that's a little bit more under the surface that everyone is aware of but isn't actively being talked about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you're not tying it together directly with your brand necessarily. You're simply talking about a topic that relates directly to your brand and relates to Love Island, and then getting people to find out more about what you do as a result of the link or the mention that you get as part of your thoughts on that piece.
Yeah, I think a great example, I can't remember who, a couple of years ago, somebody from a hairdressing brand or an extensions brand did something about how often the girls get their hair done in the villa, and when their extensions are showing, or how the pool affects blonde highlights, whatever it might be. Just those little tidbits of information that you can add as an expert without actually actively talking about your brand. It does still add that authority. Again, appreciate I've really gone off piece here with Love Island, but
no, that's good. That's good. I was actually thinking of can we actually think of any other examples, any other series, any other opportunities that you can latch onto and comment? I mean, are there other examples that perhaps another one of our panelists can share? I see you're deep in thought, Eva.
I'm just trying to think about all of the big TV shows and movies that have just been out. Like, I guess you've had like Succession, and what's the other one? I have one on Apple TV, Severance. Oh my gosh, that one. So severance, essentially, people go into work and sever themselves away from work. So they have two different lifestyles, work life and real life. Not going to give any spoilers, but experts could like go in to talk about, I guess, mental health experts saying like why people would want to sever. I mean, YouGov actually did a survey on this and actually asked people in the UK whether or not they would want to sever and go to work. I can't remember the exact results, but you can search it up. But it's something. So it's something where you can like use that TV show and go on and find the survey data from YouGov, and if it's relevant to your expert, jump on that statistic and offer why people are saying yes, they do want to sever, or no, this is the reason and why. And I guess it could also tie in with like a HR expert in a sense, and they could offer advice of improving the workspace or why people are feeling the need to sever. Yeah.
How reactive do you have to be? Is it a case of who jumps on first has more of an opportunity to win, or are you best to deliberate it for a few hours and come up with something a little bit more creative and higher standard? And is there a maximum window that you would recommend trying to do this within and just giving up after that?
Yeah, well, we've personally seen the success pitching within 24 hours, or because we try and keep on top of everything for our clients, but we have seen success actually coming in quite early. So as soon as we see something, we do hop on. If we've got that expert commentary ready, like for example, with our clients, what we try to do in the onboarding process, make sure we've got all the key topics and expert commentary, everything that we need in one place. So we can just kind of go in if we see a reactive opportunity or expert commentary opportunity, we can go into that kind of bank and see what we've got, tweak it to make sure it is relevant and it suits what the journalist is actually asking for, and then pitch that in. And if there are times that we're not quite sure, we need a bit more creativity, or we need to go back to the client and get something signed off, or whatever it may be, that can take a bit longer. So yeah, it could probably take about a day or two, but we do ideally try and make sure we pitch within 24 hours. I think that's a really good sweet spot. If you can do it within 2 or 3 hours, even better.
Okay, brilliant. And in terms of message that you use when you're reaching out to a journalist, I mean, first of all, what's the medium that you use? Is it emailing them? Is it something else? Do you try and phone them if you do have that opportunity? And how do you go about pitching to them to try and give your brand the maximum opportunity to be the one that's featured?
I'll just jump in. Sorry. I think email is the best way. Keep it short and sweet, straight to the point. This is the hook in the subject line. Tell them why it's time sensitive. Tell them what you can add, and kind of remove the fluff as well. Like Danielle says, like time is of the essence with these kind of things, and journalists are also under that same time pressure, in the same way that we're competing against a million other brands to talk about this thing, as a journalist is competing against journalists in their own space at different publications. So you want to kind of cut out the fluff and just get straight to the point and say, this is the story, this is what we're adding. We're here if you need more. That would be always my approach. I don't know about you, Sarah. Sorry, I jumped in there.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say similar. Yeah, I mean, speed's really important, and being really clear in your subject line about what you're sending. I mean, half the battle is getting a journalist to open your email. Phone doesn't really work these days. A lot of journalists don't even have, a phone on their desk, so trying to get hold of them can be really difficult. So definitely make sure that your subject line is really clear. Make sure your pitch email is really clear about what you're offering, who you're offering. But I'd say like the quality of the commentary or the story is really important as well. So, not just regurgitating what's been talked about before. It's really about offering something new, something that the journalist won't get from anybody else. So, whether it's a unique perspective or it's, some, personal experience or expertise that another brand can't offer. It's really about offering something a little bit different.
Yeah, Danielle, sorry.
I always do that, David. I apologise. Yeah, just to add to what Sarah Ross said, also to make sure that you stand out, data is a really big one. So as a business, you obviously have internal data, whether that's your website info, like website data that you've got, or customer service, whatever it is that you have that is unique to your brand and your industry. You can share that as well, and that will really make you stand out.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to clarify with Sarah Jayne, because you said keep it short and sweet. Does that mean that you should just give them a synopsis of what the story is to begin with, or should you immediately share your full opinion piece with them in order to actually not have to actually ask you for anything else?
I would say you don't want to be leaving them with any questions that can't be answered in that first pitch. Because if it were me writing a pitch and I thought, oh God, I'm going to have to ask another 5 or 6 questions about this, I'd probably be thinking this isn't something I'm going to have time to cover now. So I would say in terms of keeping it short and sweet, like the initial pitch, aka who you are, what you're doing, should be very straightforward, and then include that body of thought leadership or data, whatever it might be. I don't always think you need a full press release. I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are on that. That, you know, as PRs, we're very used to the format of the press release, but for Reactive, it's not always necessary. So it's striking that balance of answering all the questions, but not including stuff that's not needed as well.
Eva, you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to say I agree with Sarah. Sarah Jayne, sorry. Whenever I do reactive PR, I typically don't have a press release. I just have the key points at the very top, along with like the expert commentary below. And then I also offer a little bit at the end, which is like, this is the bit more information about the expert and why you should trust this expert. Sometimes as well, if I've seen that the journalist has included headshots of the expert that they tend to cover, I also include the headshots and send it to them straight away. So then they already have that. They don't have to ask me for a headshot for my expert.
Do we not want to give journalists and publications an exclusive, or are we better sending the same story to as many people as possible?
Okay, I think I would say for this one, it really depends on the story and what you're going out with. Like if it's an exclusive in terms of a journalist that you already have a great relationship with and they come to you directly for a comment, then say yes, have that as an exclusive, but make some sort of agreement where you can potentially go out with the comment like 24 hours later because they've had first access to your data and your findings. Yeah.
And if someone has used your story, do we want to actually keep a record of that and reach out to them first of all next time around?
Yeah, kind of like builds that strong relationship with a journalist. Means that they can trust you and you can trust them in terms of coverage and also hopefully a link back.
Okay, and in terms of getting as much coverage as possible, do you also try and rank publications according to some kind of domain authority or likely positioning within a page, or is simply a mention all you're looking for and it doesn't really matter where it is?
I think that depends on your goal, what your strategy looks like. If it's about brand awareness, if we're looking at like targeting niche publications, do we need, are we trying to avoid affiliate links? Because these are all things that you have to pay attention to when you're outreaching. For example, like all the major kind of new UK nationals now, I would say like a vast majority of them, if your client is on some sort of affiliate scheme, they're going to end up getting an affiliate link. And there's value in an affiliate link for sure, especially for an e-commerce. But if that's not part of your plan, if your plan is to increase organic visibility or drive traffic to a category page that's not in those affiliates, then you maybe want to be prioritizing slightly lower DR, but that are in the niche sector, or it really depends on what your like overall goal is.
Do you really need to be an expert reactive PR person in order to do this properly, or can you just be a general marketer and have this as part of your occasional routines?
I think, sorry, go on, Danielle.
Well, I would say there's no harm in trying, in learning, asking the right questions, doing your research beforehand. Then we all, everyone needs to start from somewhere. But definitely, I'd say do your homework. learn about it, learn how to do it properly, and test it out, try it. And then you will learn from there how, okay, do's and don'ts, okay, this is working for us, this doesn't work for us. And but yeah, definitely seek some help first, I'd say.
Sarah Jayne, I think you were going to say something there.
I was going to say, I think it's like a low budget tactic if you want to give it a try. I do think there's value in obviously going to experts if you want to do it at scale. But if you're on a really tight budget, you're a really small brand, like I said, like you don't necessarily need all the like best tools. You just kind of need to have an awareness of the news agenda and where you fit into that. So I think it is possible for, digital marketers to do it that are outside of the digital PR sphere as well.
Sarah Ross, are there certain brands or types of businesses that are better suited to harness the potential of reactive PR?
There's probably opportunities out there for any brand. It's understanding, the audience, where you want to be seen, and then what those journalists are writing about and looking for. So, once you understand what the media landscape looks like, then yeah, that's going to give you a better idea of the possibilities really and what you can do with it. There's always, I know it's not always tools that you need, but you can use things like Google Alerts that are free and Talkwalker alerts that are free, just to see what's being talked about and published, about certain topics. Just really consume the news and learn more about it and how the journalists are writing, and then see how your brand and your experts can fit into that really.
We're broadcasting live on YouTube and LinkedIn, and Ahmed Bullah's saying some really good info, thoughts and ideas. Thank you. Shall we move on to measuring success? Maybe what tools you use, what metrics you use to do, how often you have to measure success. Sarah Jayne, would you like to start off with your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, again, like Eva says, it's the classic, it depends on what your overall goal is. If we're looking at visibility, then might be something we measure long term. But for reactive, as a specific kind of niche of what we do, I would say it is looking at kind of coverage in terms of mentions and links to start off with, because if we're looking, this is more of a short-term tactic, as in quick fire results, low budget, low time spent. So that would always be like my primary goal with reactive specifically, without going into like broader digital PR metrics. But I don't know what everyone else thinks on that.
Danielle, you're ready to jump in there.
No, I definitely agree with what Sarah Jayne said, that because it's such a short-term tactic, it's quick turnaround. We're just looking, okay, did they say the right thing about our brand? Did we get featured? Oh, like, cool, we got a link. Amazing, fantastic. Put that in the, the report or whatever it is. And that adds up over time, and we can see. And also the great thing about reactive, if I can just say, in regards to measuring success over the however long, is that when you have launched a digital PR campaign, like a big piece, and you've got that, and over the months, years, whatever, you can always use reactive PR, come back to that and say, hey, we actually got a piece about that, and add that in as an opportunity to get a link or mention, and that also can add to the traffic, whatever it is, the category page that you're trying to drive traffic to, whatever it may be. So it does have varied sort of success depending on what you're looking at.
And Sarah, do you have any thoughts that you want to add in relation to how you measure success?
No, I agree with what's been said, really. Yeah, the brand mentions, monitoring those, the coverage, the quality of the titles that you're gaining the coverage in, and the links are the main ones, really, that we look at.
It seems, by its very nature, reactive in terms of what you do, how you go about doing this. Does this mean that it's not really possible to be strategic about what you're going to do and plan your reactive PR, or is a lot of the planning around what TV shows and other media opportunities are likely to be happening over the year, and just being willing to piggyback on what you think is going to be happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of sorry, Sarah. There's a lot of proactive planning that goes in line with reactive. And then like we didn't really talk about it much, but like the tools that you can use for like journalist requests, they are very much the reactive side of things. And so if a journalist is asking for something specifically, then that's when your proactive plan might not come in play with the reactive commentary that's needed. So yeah.
Which Sarah,
I think
Sarah.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say that you can be proactive about it. You know, there are some things that you know are going to be talked about year after year. You know, you can look back at journalists' stories and on what they've written about previously, topics that might come up again. So, you know, any sort of extreme weather, heat waves, snow, we can't cope with any of those. You know, there's bound to be angles that you could be reactive on. Things like the budget for B2B stuff. So, you know, when that happens, that's in the diary. We know that's going to happen. How can we react to it? What can we say about it? What can, you know, our clients advise their clients on? So there are certain topics, I think, that you can plan for, and you know, you can speak to your brand and the experts within your brand and understand the topics that they are able to talk about. And, you know, you can come up with a plan of, you know, what are the key topics we want to look at? Okay, where are the likely opportunities going to be, and try and map out what that might look like across the year.
Let's finish off with one action that SEOs need to take in order to get started with reactive PR if they haven't really done so already. So if we can get each of the panelists to have a think about that one action, please, and also at the same time share where the listener can find out more about you. Sarah Ross, shall we stay with you and ask your opinion first, please?
Yeah, so really identify the media that you want your experts to appear in, and yeah, just really consume those stories, understand what the journalists are looking for, and who those journalists are. That would be my top tip for getting started before you even write anything. Just, you know, understand what that journalist is writing about and what's being talked about in the industry.
Lovely. Where can people find out more about you, Sarah?
So you can find out more about me at rcoms.co.uk.
Thanks for coming on. And Sarah Jayne?
Yeah, I think one of the things I really recommend, especially if you're a one-man band, if you're like don't have loads of time, create a quote bank and just start housing all of the things that you've put together, whether it's like existing on-site blogs, whether it's quotes that you've provided before, or like press releases you've done. Have a quote bank where you can kind of put all the key themes and topics that you're talking about next to that content, so that if things come in through a journal request, or if something comes up in the news, you can have a quick scan and say, yes, we've already got something on this. And it might be that you can outreach that directly or build on it, add something new to it. It's a really good time saving tactic, I'd say.
Lovely piece of actionable advice there. And where can people find out more about you, Sarah Jayne?
So our website is cedarwood.digital. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not going to call it X. I still refuse to call it X. It's Twitter. Sarah Jayne PR. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. And Danielle, what's one action SEOs need to take to get started with reactive PR today?
I'd say sign up to free tools, reactive PR tools, journal request tools. So you've got SOS. There's so many. I've kind of lost them all now. Or just go onto Twitter, type in hashtag journal requests. You can do the same for Blue Sky if you're on there. And you can just literally monitor, just spend a few minutes a day, just go through it, see what comes up. And you'll start getting an idea of what the journalists are asking for and how they want it structured, so then you can then prepare to pitch yourself once you've got everything ready, like what Sarah Jayne and Sarah Ross mentioned.
Sounds good. And where can people find out more? How about you, Danielle?
They can find me on handnote.co.uk or on LinkedIn, Danielle, Neah, Amponsah.
Thank you, Danielle. And Eva?
What everybody else said, along with, I guess, making sure that you have the right spokesperson on the niche that you want to talk about. So building out their profile of getting a little bit about their background, what qualifications they have, and a headshot. loads and loads of people I've spoken to who I've tried to get see them to be a spokesperson refuse headshots. So headshots are always great, but it's not a necessity. So if you have those, it saves you from asking your client later on and down the line, have you got a headshot? And then they have to wait for a headshot in that sort of scenario. So yeah.
And where can people find you, Eva?
They can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Eva Cheng, and on Blue Sky or Twitter, it's just Eva Cheng PR.
I've been your host, Bain, and you've been listening to the Majestic SEO panel. If you want to join us live next time, sign up at majestic.com/webinars, and of course, check out SEOin2025.com too. Bye bye for now.